important to all of this. You're right to be in Cambridge. Smith Pierce.
The FBI provided me with a helicopter out of Logan International Airport to fly me to Brielle, New Jersey. I was on board the Disorient Express, and there was no getting off. I spent the flight obsessing about Pierce, his apartment, Isabella Calais, their apartment, his studies in biology and modern philosophy, Noam Chomsky. I wouldn't have thought it possible, wouldn't have dreamt it possible, but Pierce was already eclipsing Gary Sinege and Simon Conklin. I despised everything about Pierce. Seeing the pictures of Isabella Calais had done it for me. Alien? I wrote on the foolscap pad lying across my lap. He identifies with descriptor. Alienated. Alienated from what? Idyllic upbringing in California. Doesn't fit any of the psychopathic profiles we've used before. He's an original. He secretly enjoys that, doesn't he? No discernible pattern of murders that link with a psychological motive. Murders seem haphazard and arbitrary. He revels in his own originality. Dr. Sante, Simon Conklin, now Anthony Bruno. Why them? Seems impossible to predict Thomas Pierce's next move, his next kill. Why go south to the Jersey Shore? It had occurred to me that he was originally from a shore town. Pierce had grown up near Laguna Beach in Southern California. Was he going home, in a manner of speaking? Was the New Jersey Shore as close to home as he could get? As close as he dared to go? I now had a reasonable amount of information about his background in California before he came east. He had lived on a working farm not far from the famous Irvine Ranch properties. 3 generations of doctors in the family. Good, hard-working people. His siblings were all doing well. Not one of them believed that Thomas was capable of any of this mayhem and murder he was being accused of committing. FBI says Mr. Smith is disorganized, chaotic, unpredictable. I scribbled in my pad. What if they're wrong? Pierce is responsible for much of their data about Smith. Pierce created Mr. Smith, then did the profile on him. I kept revisiting his and Isabella's apartment in my mind. The place was so very neat and organized. The home had a definite organizing principle. It revolved around Isabella. Her pictures, clothes, even her perfume bottles had been left in place. The smell of Le Douton and Je Reviens permeated their bedroom to this day. Thomas Pierce had loved her. Pierce had loved. Pierce had felt passion and emotion. That was another thing the FBI was wrong about. He killed because he thought he was losing her, and he couldn't bear it. Was Isabella the only person who had ever loved Pierce? Another small piece of the puzzle suddenly fell into place. I was so struck by it that I said it aloud in the helicopter. Her heart on a spear. He had pierced her heart. Jesus Christ. He had confessed to the very first murder. He had confessed. He'd left a clue, but the police missed it. What else were we missing? What was he up to now? What did Mr. Smith represent inside his mind? Was everything representational for him? Symbolic? Artistic? Was he creating a kind of language for us to follow, or was it simpler? He had pierced her heart. Pierce wanted to be caught. Caught and punished. Crime and punishment. Why couldn't we catch him? I landed in New Jersey around 5 at night. Kyle Craig was waiting for me. Carl was sitting on the hood of a dark blue town car. He was drinking Samuel Adams beer out of the bottle. "You find Anthony Bruno yet?" I called out as I walked toward him. "You find the body?"
Mr. Smith goes to the seashore. Sounded like an unimaginative children's story. There was enough moonlight for Thomas Pierce to make his way along the long stretch of glowing white sand at Point Pleasant Beach. He was carrying a corpse, what was left of it. He had Anthony Bruno loaded on his back and shoulders. He walked just south of popular Jenkinson's Pier and the much newer Seaquarium. The boarded-up arcades of the amusement park were tightly packed along the beach shoulder. The small, grayish buildings looked forlorn and mute in their shuttered state. As usual, music ran through his head. First Elvis Costello's Clubland, Then Beethoven's Piano Sonata No. 21. Then Mother, Mother by Tracy Bonham. The savage beast inside him wasn't calmed, not even close, but at least he could feel a beat. It was 3:45 in the morning, and even the surf-casting fishermen weren't out yet. He'd seen only one police patrol car so far. The police in the tiny beach town were a joke, anyway. Mr. Smith against the Keystone Cops. This whole funky seashore area reminded him of Laguna Beach, at least the tourista parts of Laguna. He could still picture the surf shops that dotted the Pacific Coast Highway back home, the Southern California artifacts, Flogo sandals, Stussy tees, neoprene gloves and wetsuits, beach boots, the unmistakable smell of board wax. He was physically strong, had a working man's build. He carried Anthony Bruno over one shoulder without much effort. He had cut out all the vital parts, so there wasn't much of Anthony anymore. Anthony was a shell, no heart, liver, intestines, lungs, or brain. Thomas Pierce thought about the FBI's continuing search. The Bureau's fabled manhunts were overrated, a holdover from the glory days of John Dillinger and Bonnie and Clyde. He knew this to be so after years of observing the Bureau chase Mr. Smith. They would never have caught Smith, not in 100 years. The FBI was looking for him in all the wrong places. They would surely have numbers, meaning excessive force, their trademark maneuver. They would be all over the airports, probably expecting him to head back to Europe. And what about the wild cards in the search, people like Alex Cross? Cross had made his bones, no doubt about that. Maybe Cross was more than he seemed to be. At any rate, he relished the thought of Dr. Cross being in on this, too. He liked the competition. The dead weight on his back and shoulder was starting to get heavy. It was almost morning, close to daybreak. It wouldn't do to be found lugging a deboweled corpse across Point Pleasant Beach. He carried Anthony Bruno another 50 yards to a glistening white lifeguard's chair. He climbed the creaking rungs of the chair and propped the body in the seat. The remains of the corpse was naked and exposed for the world to see. Quite a sight. Anthony was a clue, if anybody on the search team had half a brain and was using it properly. "I'm not an alien. Do any of you follow that?" Pierce shouted above the ocean's steady roar. "I'm human. I'm perfectly normal. I'm just like you."
It was all a mind game, wasn't it? Pierce against the rest of us. While I had been at his apartment in Boston, a team of FBI agents went out to Southern California to meet with Thomas Pierce's family. The mother and father still lived on the same farm between Laguna and El Toro, where Thomas Pierce had grown up. Henry Pierce practiced medicine, mostly among the indigent farm workers in the area. His lifestyle was modest, and the reputation of the family impeccable. Pierce had an older brother and sister, doctors in Northern California, who were also very well regarded and worked with the poor. Not a person the profiler spoke to could imagine Thomas a murderer. He'd always been a good son and brother, a gifted student, who seemed to have close friends and no enemies. Thomas Pierce fit no brief for a pattern killer that I was familiar with. He was an original. Impeccable was a word that jumped out of the FBI profiler reports. Maybe Pierce didn't want to be impeccable. I re-reviewed the news articles and clippings about Pierce from the time of Isabella Clay's gruesome murder. I was keeping track of the more perplexing notions on 3x5-inch index cards. The packet was growing rapidly. Laguna Beach, commercial shore town. Parts similar to Point Pleasant and Bayhead. Had Pierce killed in Laguna in the past? Had the disease now spread to the northeast? Pierce's father was a doctor. Pierce didn't make it to Dr. Pierce, but as a med student he had performed autopsies. Looking for his humanity when he kills. Studying humans because he fears he has no human qualities himself. He had a dual major as an undergrad, biology and philosophy. Fan of a linguist, Noam Chomsky, Or is it Chomsky's political writings that turned Pierce on? Plays word and math games on his power book. What were we all missing so far? What was I missing? Why was Thomas Pierce killing all of these people? He was impeccable, wasn't he?
Pierce stole a forest green BMW convertible in the expensive, quaint, quite lovely shore town of Bayhead, New Jersey. On the corner of East Avenue and Harris Street, a prime location, he hot-wired and grabbed the vehicle as slickly as a pickpocket working the boardwalks down at Point Pleasant Beach. He was so good at this, overqualified for the scut work. He drove west through Bricktown at moderate speeds to the Garden State Parkway. He played music all the way, Talking Heads, Alanis Morissette, Melissa Etheridge, Blind Faith. Music helped him to feel something. It always had from the time he'd been a boy. An hour and a quarter later, he entered Atlantic City. He sighed with pleasure. He loved it instantly, the shameless tawdriness, the grubbiness, the tattered sinfulness, the soullessness of the place. He felt as if he were home, and he wondered if the FBI geniuses had linked the Jersey Shore to Laguna Beach yet. Entering Atlantic City, he had half expected to see a beautifully maintained expanse of lawn sloping down to the ocean, surfers with peroxided gnarly hair, volleyball played around the clock. But no, this was New Jersey. Southern California, his real home, was thousands of miles away. He mustn't get confused now. He checked into Bally's Park Place. Up in his room, he started to make phone calls. He wanted to order in. He stood at a picture window and watched the ghostly waves of the Atlantic punish the beach again and again. Far down the beach he could see Trump Plaza. The audacious and ridiculous penthouse apartments were perched on the main building like a space shuttle ready to take off. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, of course there was a pattern. Why couldn't anyone figure it out? Why did he always have to be misunderstood? At 2 a.m, Thomas Pierce sent the trackers another voicemail message. Inez, in Atlantic City.
God damn him. Half a day after we recovered the body of Anthony Bruno, we got the next message from Pierce. He had taken another one already. We were on the move immediately. 24 of us rushed to Atlantic City and prayed he was still there, that someone named Inez hadn't already been butchered and studied by Mr. Smith and discarded like the evening trash. Giant billboards screamed all along the Atlantic City Expressway. Caesar's Atlantic City, Harrah's, Merv Griffin's Resort Casino Hotel, Trump's Castle, Trump Taj Mahal, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Now that was funny. Inez, Atlantic City, I kept hearing inside my head. Sounds like Isabella. We set up shop in the FBI field office, which was only a few blocks from the old steel pier and the so-called Great Wooden Way. There were usually only 4 agents in the small office. Their expertise was organized crime and gambling, and they weren't considered movers and shakers inside the bureau. They weren't prepared for a savage, unpredictable killer who had once been a very good agent. Someone had brought a stack of newspapers, and they were piled high on a conference table. The New York, Philly, and Jersey headline writers having a field day with this one. Alien killer visits Jersey Shore. FBI killer diller in Atlantic City. Mr. Smith manhunt. Hundreds of federal agents flocked to New Jersey Shore. Monster on the loose in New Jersey. Sampson came up to the beach from Washington. He wanted Pierce as badly as any of us. He, Kyle, and I worked together brainstorming over what Pierce, Mr. Smith, might do next. Sandra Greenberg from Interpol worked with us too. She was seriously jet-lagged and had deep circles under her eyes, but she knew Pierce and had been at most of the European murder sites. He's not a goddamn split personality? Sampson asked. Smith and Pierce? I shook my head. He seems to be in control of his faculties at all times. He created Smith to serve some other purpose. I agree with Alex, Sandra Greenberg said from across the table. But what is the sodding purpose?
Whatever it was, it worked.
Kyle joined in.
He had us chasing Mr. Smith halfway around the world. We're still chasing. No one has ever jerked around the bureau like this.
I was up and pacing again. My side was hurting. But I didn't want anyone to know about it. They would try to send me home, make me miss the fun. I let myself ramble.